No, I was saying that you said you studied Daniel chapter 7, so you should know who the little horn is, correct?
It's America.
Okay, if that's your interpretation of the scripture, then that's your interpretation. My interpretation of the scripture is not that. Because if you look at the scriptures before that, it talks about the beast. And it talks about the beast who has the body of a lion, then also has the wings. It also talks about the bear who has the 3 ribs in its mouth.
All right, people, so this is why I gave you the history lesson all about Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and Revelation. That's why I talked about it, because as you can see, this gentleman, Tazarab, said that the little horn power that is talked about that comes up after the 10 kingdoms, after the 10 horns, that is America. Where is your biblical information for that? Where is your historical information for that? That's why I showed you guys this, people. Remember, I showed you this. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, defeat divided nations of Western Europe. Remember, I also showed you this list right here. These are the 10 tribes that got broken up. You have the Huns, the Heruli, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Anglo-Saxons, the Lombards, the Franks, the Burgundians, the Suevi, and the Visigoths, people. These are the 10 tribes. These are the 10 kingdoms that were broken up and split up in Western Europe, people. This is not talking about America. This is true biblical facts.
7, so you should know who the little horn is, correct?
It's America.
Okay, if that's your interpretation of the scripture, then that's your interpretation. My interpretation of the scripture is not that. Because if you look at the scriptures before that, it talks about the beast. And it talks about the beast who has the body of a lion, then also has the wings. It also talks about the bear who has the 3 ribs in its mouth. And the first one is Babylon. The second one is Medo-Persia. The other one it talks about is a jaguar, or excuse me, not a jaguar, it's a leopard. And it's a leopard with 4 heads, I believe.
That's great. The next one's Roman. Then they got horns. Then they got the little horns. Where are we going with this?
Can I finish explaining the scripture, though? Then it talks about when it gets to Rome. It talks about another beast and animal. But also it talks about when...
Alright, so for him to be rushing me and then also not knowing what he's talking about shows you what I was talking about with the arrogance of some of these Hebrew Israelites. They think they know what they're talking about, but in reality, in the life that we live and what we see with our own 2 eyes, not what we go to sleep with or what we imagining up here, but what happens in reality. These Hebrew Israelites don't know what they're talking about biblically or historically. They just don't know what they're talking about. And like I said, for you to try to rush someone who is presenting you biblical and historical information, whether you don't believe it or not, and then also try to rush somebody on that, when in reality, they're actually talking, you know what they're talking about. Yet you rushing that person, you know, just like I said, it shows the arrogance and the ignorance that is, you know, presented to a lot of these Hebrew Israelites, and then they take that and, you know, instill that within them, and they become arrogant and ignorant. It's just ridiculous. But let's finish this.
The dream with Nebuchadnezzar with the feet, it says that the feet is going to be broken up into 10 kingdoms. And the 10 kingdoms are going to rule, and then the little horn is going to come out of it. That represents the 10 kingdoms of Europe, of Rome. Because you had the Vandals, you had the Franks, you had the Visigoths, and you had the Ostrogoths. Those are the 10 kingdoms of Europe. And then also after
the topic is, will the Israelites have slaves in the kingdom? If we could just keep to that point.
That's something that you support. I don't support that, so I'm rebuttaling against that.
Topic of discussion. We're supposed to go through the scriptures and prove that non-Israelites won't be slaves in the kingdom. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
So as you can see, not only is he not letting me speak and let me have the floor, he really thinks he knows what he's talking about. He says, what does all this have to do with black Hebrew Israelites having white slaves or Asian slaves, whatever the situation is, in heaven? Look here, people. And I've already stated this, and I told him this as well. Before he even said anything, like I stated this right out the gate, I have a pet peeve when people read only one scripture and just take that for face value and then expect a full-blown interpretation of that scripture. First of all, like I told you guys in other videos, he has to explain verse 1 all the way till we get to 10. Because remember, it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. They don't explain anything for that. They don't show any interpretation. They skip all past that. They just go one to that specific verse. They don't care for any other verse. In Revelation 13, that's their golden boy right there. Let's continue real quick. And I saw one of his heads were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. I already shown my belief or my documentation or my sources for why I believe my interpretation of Revelation 13 and so forth on, even in Daniel chapter 7 as well. He don't show any of that. He just saying, go to Amos 9, chapter 9, verse 11. You don't show no history behind it, no nothing, because they don't have anything to back it. The only they have is the scripture that they misinterpret, and they want to be Hulk Hogan, rough riding type of mentality, that aggressive tone that they bring. Besides that aggressive tone and all that yelling that they do on the street and the misquoting the scripture, if they didn't have any of that, it wouldn't be an organization, people. And as you can see right here, people, we get to verse 5 all the way to 10. They have to explain this as well. You have to explain verse 5 where it talks about the blasphemy that is done. You have to also explain the 42 months, the prophetic time. You have to interpret that. You have to explain that. You guys don't have anything for that. I do, though. And I can present that. And you don't have to accept it, but it's just me bringing it to you. Verse 6, you got to explain that as well. How did the white man open his mouth and blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven? Because black Hebrew Israelites wasn't in heaven. They were on earth in the Atlantic slave trade. So you have to really, really explain and interpret all of this. And you guys really don't have anything that is valid or logical. It is honestly probably going to be... Let me continue. You got us to explain verse 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Like I said, even during the Atlantic slave trade, when you had the church, which is the Roman Catholic Church, persecuting all groups of people, not just black people, but all groups of people, you had white people getting persecuted as well. So at what point in time did all white people bond together and say, let's go and just conquer everything? All blacks, all Mexicans, all whatever the situation may be, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, Haitians. At what point did white people all do that? And you can't say during the Roman times, because the Romans had to conquer the Greeks. They had to conquer Macedonians. And they were white. They were of a lighter texture. So at what point did all white people get together, buddy? You don't have any date. I have dates for my information. You don't have any dates, because it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, you also have to explain verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose name is not written in the book of life. At what point did all white people band together and have people worshiping them? And it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. You guys have that false interpretation already, so I don't even got to go into it. But I already explained my belief behind it. But let's continue. Now, look here. When we get to the top of Revelation, this beast that has all these components combined together, that was in Daniel chapter 7 that I already explained in another video, combined together. And this beast is given this power and authority from the dragon, which is the devil. Now look here, people. I've already explained how this is the Roman Catholic Church. This beast is the little horn spoken of in Daniel, people. This ugly looking thing right here is the little horn, and it's also the beast that's spoken of in Revelation chapter 13. Alright, people, here are some attributes and characteristics of the little horn. It arose out of the fourth beast, and it was among the 10 horns, people. Now, I've already explained how the 10 horns were those 10 tribes. It arose after the 10 horns. It was different from the other horns. It was more stout.